I have a slow PC and I use Blender. I want Blender to render animation faster, and in this video I'm going to test which one is faster, Ubuntu versus Windows. In order to do that, I'll install Ubuntu on an M.2 card and test how much faster my PC will be. This guide is beginner friendly, so even if you're a new user for Ubuntu or Blender, you'll find it easy to follow. To install Linux Ubuntu on my HP Pavilion Gaming PC, I need another SSD drive to avoid having booting problems running multiple operating systems for the same drive. I get an adapter for my PCIe X1 slot and a 512GB M.2 card from Amazon. Check the links below for the products. My humble gaming rig has a green LED to prove that it's a gamer PC, and a GeForce GTX 1650 Super, which is not a bad card, but not great either. For memory, I have a vanilla 8GB of DDR4 RAM, and the processor is Intel Core i5-10400F. My budget PC has been okay for my video editing and my beginner Blender experiments, but now I want to upgrade it to make Blender faster. After seeing videos about the performance boost about Linux, I wanted to start my OEM upgrading journey by comparing the performance of Linux and Windows. I assume that Ubuntu should give me a very cost-effective boost to render times, but let's find out what really happens. To test which one is better, I created a simple rotating scene with some structures, with textures, fog-like volume, and floating glass crystals. The animation is 96 frames long. If you want to grab the Blender file to compare your results to mine, I have it on my website. You'll find the link below for the article. To get started, let's first download Ubuntu to an USB drive, install the hardware and then the software, and render the scene to compare the performance. In order to make the USB drive bootable, we need to burn the ISO file by using a program like PowerISO. When we have the installation files ready on our USB, it's time to plug in the hard drive. Let's open the case and see what's inside. There's only one M.2 socket on my motherboard, so I got myself an adapter to utilize the PCIe X1 socket that's right above the graphics card. Let's first plug in the M.2 card on the adapter and tighten the screw to hold it in place. Optionally, I could have gotten a SATA 2.5 type solid state drive, as I have open slots for those, but I chose to use the M.2 because it has faster data transfer. Linux will work fast on either one, but I chose the fastest option because the price difference is negligible. Later on, if I need more space, I can install a SATA 2.5 SSD drive to store large files and share them between the two operating systems. Okay, next step is to boot the computer and install Ubuntu. Check that the USB stick is connected and press the power button. If your PC doesn't start the installer but opens Windows, restart and open BIOS or boot menu on the start screen by pressing F9 or F12 and select the USB as the primary boot drive. Now, click Enter to select Try or install Ubuntu. Follow the on-screen information and connect your Wi-Fi for any updates. Check the box to install third-party drivers and give a secure boot password to install them. This is an important step, because you want Ubuntu to use the real drivers from AMD or Nvidia, not the generic driver, or your Blender performance will suffer. More about it later. If you have Windows installed, Ubuntu will likely prompt you to install Ubuntu on the same drive. We don't want to do that. Choose something else. Here we can see the drive 1 and drive 0. On drive 1, I have partitions, so that is my clue that Windows is installed on that one, and the drive 1 has no partitions, so that has to be the new drive. I'll select the new drive and create a new partition table. This interface is not the most intuitive for a novice user, but it does the job. By double-clicking on the free space that appeared, I can now choose the file system and set the mount point to a /. Next, I'll select the time zone and give basic info and password to log in. When the installation is complete, you can remove the USB stick and restart once again. Here, you should enroll MOK, Machine Owner Key. This is for enabling the proprietary graphic card drivers. I failed to do it here, so let's jump forward in the future on another clip for a second. Select Enroll MOK, then continue Yes to enroll the key and give the password for secure boot. Finally, select Reboot. If you missed this step like I did, don't worry, let's go back to the original video. Now we get to see Ubuntu for the first time. You can skip the prompts. I'll go ahead and open the software installer to fill my screen with OBS and install the updates Ubuntu automatically prompted. The updater wants to reboot once again, so let's do that. Now I'll set up the OBS to have a better quality video. Next we can install Blender by opening the software installer. Type in Blender and find the latest version from the list and hit install. Once finished, hit your Windows key and type in Blender, and here it is. Add Blender to favorites to stick it to the ribbon. If your mouse sensitivity is wonky, you can open up the settings from the top right menu and adjust the appearance and display settings. In my case, I'll lower my mouse speed. If you have a graphics card, make sure you always use GPU in the render settings. Additionally, open the Preferences tab to set Blender to use optics or CUDA for Nvidia cards or HIP for Radeons. One API is for Intel graphics cards. If you skip the secure boot like I did, you cannot select either one just yet. Why? Because we need to install the proprietary drivers for a graphics card. Let's go there by opening up the software updater, select settings to open software and updates, and selecting additional drivers. Here you should see the available drivers for the graphics card you have. Ideally, you select the latest driver, reboot, and give the MOK password to enable the proprietary drivers when it prompts it. Now give the password and restart your system. I managed to screw this up, because when I did that and opened Blender, it still wasn't working. But no worries, if you can't install your graphic card drivers in the additional drivers window anymore, for any reason, do like I did and open up Terminal by hitting the keyboard shortcut Ctrl, Alt, and T. And type in sudo apt install nvidia-driver-520 nvidia-dkms-520 or whatever the latest version is, and give your password. Press Y and hit enter. After it's done, open up the additional drivers window again and you should see the right driver selected. However, you need to reboot Ubuntu once more to get it working. Open up Blender and this time the render devices should be available. See? Easy, wasn't it? One quick tip. Select cycles and choose GPU compute in the scene settings and save the startup file to use this as your default settings. Now we're finally ready to test how much faster Blender is on Ubuntu compared to Windows 10 home version. If you're curious about the render settings I used for this benchmark, you can download the Blender file I'm using from my website to see the details. In short, I used cycles as the render engine, OptiX selected, 128 samples with denoising, and tiling with 256 pixel tile size. Let's hit Ctrl plus function 12 and start the party. As we are first rendering in Linux, I have high expectation that this operating system is better optimized for Blender. Due to the complexity of the scene, the volume, 2 light sources, reflections, the rendering time for Ubuntu was in total 2 hours and 47 minutes. For a 4-second animation, I know. GTX 1650 Super is an okay card for games like Fortnite and PUBG, but it does not have the muscle for heavy 3D rendering like the RTX cards do. For example, it does not support ray tracing, so rendering a scene like this is very slow. In another video, I'll show you what kind of difference it makes. We are done in Ubuntu, so let's go back to Windows and load up the file. By the way, changing from one OS to another takes less than a minute. It's really fast. To help Windows 10 perform better, I'll free up some RAM by closing down Google Drive and some other tasks from the Task Manager. And here we go, rendering has started. Will Windows challenge the reputation of Ubuntu as the better OS for Blender? To my surprise, it's a tight battle, much tighter than I expected. I checked the render times for frames and they are unexpectedly close to each other. I am worried now that Windows 10 is actually faster than Ubuntu. Did I waste my money and effort? Is this all in vain? I need to wait to see the final results. Time to reveal the results. As we know, Ubuntu completed the render in 2 hours and 47 minutes. Windows 10 completed the render in 2 hours and 42 minutes. Holy smokes! I used the same render settings for both and I was expecting to see some 15% difference in favor of Ubuntu. My illusion for the Ubuntu superiority is crushed. My first upgrade actually ended up reducing the performance by 3%. How can this be? If you have an answer, let me know. The only hope for using Ubuntu is the following upgrades I'm doing for my computer. Next time comparing how fast I can render the same scene in Blender by replacing the original 8GB RAM with Corsair 32GB RAM. Maybe now Ubuntu will be faster. Click to watch it now.